Hey Zaka family! Zaka is launching an exclusive membership platform to provide you with career development workshops, coaching, community, and so much more. Go to ZakaConnect.com and sign up to receive information on how to access early registration and perks. Hello, everybody. This is Paul Hermit, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Garaudy Etienne, who is the lead product manager at MongoDB. Garaudy, welcome to the show.
Hey, Paul, how's it going?
Ah, pleasure's on mine. I'm doing good today. Definitely want to dive in and talk about your educational background. That's something I want to definitely talk a little bit more about. But before I get into that, because I know it's very intensive, I want to kind of know a little bit more about your journey, where you're from, and like for example, your cultural background.
Yeah, sure. So I was born and raised Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Grew
Mm-hmm.
up in Haiti until I was 11. Then I moved to Belgium for a bit, a year, some change. Then to America after that in eighth grade. And I've been in the US since 2001 till now. So is that now 22 years
Mm-hmm.
almost?
And how was it?
Yeah.
How was it growing up in Haiti?
For me, it was fine. My dad was a politician. My mother was a businesswoman slash teacher, and so we grew up Haitian middle class, which is still poor for the U.S., but for Haiti, it's all relative, right? And so compared to most
Mm-hmm.
Haitians, I think we were doing pretty well. I went to a really good school, probably number one school in Haiti, an all-boys school called St. Louis. That's where all the rich kids or educated kids go. And so, yeah, life was pretty fine there. We had to leave because my his political opponents decided, they didn't want us on the planet. So they tried to kill
Oh
us a couple
wow!
times.
Whoa,
And then,
whoa,
yeah,
whoa!
yeah, after the third time, my
I thought
mom
you was
was
gonna
like,
say
hey,
something else. I was like, yeah, I was waiting for something else, and you're like, no, 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 they try to
no,
take us
no.
out. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So after the third time, my mother was like, yeah, I'm not letting my kids die here for politics. And so that's why we left and seek political asylum in Belgium. And then
Mm.
from there, we decided, yeah, it was not a good fit. My mom didn't like it. Also, my mom's whole family was in the U.S., right across New Jersey and Boston. So we moved to Jersey, where my aunt was.
Wow, that definitely was a a lot right there. Now the question is, I mean, first off, it's obviously safety first, family,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Obviously the Haitian culture is very rooted in that kind of stuff. A lot of our guests have been of Haitian descent.
Okay.
Why Belgium? Like that's a big. Why didn't you just go right to
Yeah.
Jersey?
Yeah, that was, that's what I thought was going to happen because we used to come to the U.S. on vacation all the time every summer. But a couple of things. One, my father wanted us to keep speaking French. He thought if we moved to America, we would lose that. And so he had
Mm,
some really good friends that had a place in Belgium that we could stay and said, hey, we can continue being a francophone country and really not lose that part.
mm.
And so then, yeah, we got there. My mom was like, yeah, this is not for me. After a while, we just said, no, we're going to America. This is the way to be, which I think was the right decision,
Mhm.
judging by where my life has been so far. Compared
Okay.
to an alternate universe where I stayed in Belgium, I think this was the right thing to do.
Okay. Now, as a child growing up, like what influenced you, inspired you to be the person that you are today?
Yeah, that's tough. When who I am today is a function of some random choices at critical junctures of my life. I can't say where I am now is what I envisioned as a child, but as far as role models, I think having two parents that are educated, highly educated, definitely goes a long way with that, right? And also who you grew
Mhm.
up around. And so, as far as inspiration, I sort of wanted my dad's academic success, but with my mom's financial acumen. If that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Okay.
And so
Great
I
way of
wanted
putting it.
something that had that combination. But also as a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. Like most kids probably.
Mhm.
And I got pretty close to doing that, and I got close and pivoted. But
Mhm.
I think those are the things I looked at in terms of I think education and success in school was just an expectation since birth, and so
Mhm.
to me it was like along the way, like, hey, how can I be the best in my class at whatever I'm doing?
Now, you're saying at a young age, you wanted to, when you were growing up, you wanted to be an astronaut. That was like one of the first
Yeah,
things.
since I was probably like 4 or 5. Yeah, you see a spaceship. I think a lot of children want to be astronauts, and so it's like, yeah, I want to go to space and travel and see what's out there and past the frontier.
I mean, working with NASA, going out into space has always been like one of those things where I'm like, at a young age, I was like, oh, that sounds so good. But then I'm like,
Yeah,
that's really far from the family right
yeah,
there.
yeah,
You really are like far away. You taking off into a ship, and obviously they always talk about the return home, but sometimes they're like, oh, you're gonna be out here for a couple of months. I don't know about
yeah.
living out on a ship. Like it's
When you're a
different.
kid, yeah,
Oh,
when you're
true.
a
Yeah,
kid,
you don't think about
you
it.
don't think about the logistics. It's like, hey, I'm going to space. I'm an astronaut. Putting me in the
Ah,
rocket and then I land
that's right.
magically. Who knows?
I'm leaving
And that's it.
Port-au-Prince. I'm leaving
Exactly.
Port-au-Prince. I'm out.
That's the extent of my thinking there. That was it.
Mhm. Now, growing up, obviously, I know one of the biggest obstacles is like leaving Port-au-Prince, then going to Belgium, and then coming to the States. Like, but what other obstacles did you face or insecurities that you had to deal with at a young age?
Insecurities and obstacles, yeah, those are different ones. Let's go with obstacles. I think that the biggest shock factor, and like even though I came to the US all the time to visit, being in a school in Belgium where there were like three black kids in my class, that was a big shock. In Haiti, everybody looks like you. You don't even think about your blackness. But then it's like in your face that you're black when you get to a country that's predominantly non-black, right? And so that was the first obstacle. Not only that, I did not know that there were these racial prejudices, right? It's like, okay, you're different, your hair's different, or you're more athletic, or whatever, insert other stereotypes, that's fine. But for some reason, I was always first in my class in Haiti, right? So I got the highest grades. And in Haiti, they rank you. So like when they hand you the report card, they call the person that's last in the class first up to the first. So you're always nervous because you want to be called last because it means you're
Hmm.
top of the class,
True, true,
right? And
true.
so when I got to Belgium, I got the highest grade in a few classes to start. And like a couple kids were shocked. And I'm like, why the hell are y'all shocked? I've been number one since I can remember. So why would it be any different in a new country? Not only that, school in Belgium was way easier than school in Haiti. So I'm like, what's going on here?
Wow.
Right? I
Okay.
almost felt like I stayed back, even though I went up a grade. And
Mm.
so, then it was like, eventually, I was young. I was still like 12 years old. But you find out that there's this expectation that somehow black kids were supposed to be lesser than, academically than the non-black kids,
Mm.
especially to the Caucasian kids there. And so like I was confused, like, well, I'm better than all y'all. So that's a personal problem. But that was the first time I was confronted with that expectation that I'm supposed to not be good enough or to fail. Right.
Mm.
And sometimes it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Not every class has, the kind of judgment like math, which is why I love math and science, where there's only one right answer. So the professor thinks you're not a good writer. It doesn't matter how well you write. They can give you a B even if your essay is stellar because they decided black people can't write well. You can't do that in math. If the answer is two and I write two, it doesn't matter how racist you are, right? You can't give me the wrong answer. So that was the first
Mm.
time in Belgium where I had
Mm.
to deal with that expectation, which impacted my potential grades, if that makes sense.
Mm. That was deep right there. I mean, first off, I'm sorry that you even had to deal with something like that at a young age, but you said something very deep, where you're like, numbers don't have a color, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that, to take away where, you're true, 1 + 1 is
Yeah.
2. Like, what are you gonna say?
Yep.
You know?
Exactly.
You can't fail someone, like, oh no, the answer's not 2, it's something else. But mind you, everybody else wrote 2 down.
Yeah. And
Wow.
as far as the race part, at the end of the day, if I was born in the US, I would have been dealing with it since first grade. So who knows? Maybe I would have been worse off or different. I don't know. But
Mm.
I am happy and privileged to say, I spent the first 11 years of my life in a country where everybody looked like me in class. And so I didn't
Mhm.
have to deal with that until I was 12. Right. And so I think some of that shielded me, and allowed me to grow and be a child and be myself without thinking about that for a while. And so, yes, it
Mhm.
was a culture shock, but, at least it took 12 years to get shocked instead of being shocked since birth, if that makes sense.
True. Now, how did you deal with that? Like, what were some of the things that you know, had to do mentally? Did you just say, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to disassociate myself from these individuals," or was it something to the point where you brought it to like your teachers, your administration, and say, "Yo, like
Yeah.
I feel like I'm being picked on because of this."
Yeah. I think I dissociated myself, but not because I was a better person, a smarter person. I think that I was dealing with so much more stuff that was more important and worse leaving Haiti was already a bigger problem than dealing with this. And the fact that my parents were getting divorced while we were in Belgium was a bigger problem, right? So I had other shocks in my life. And, also middle school is just a different time. So going through middle school, divorcing parents in a new country is already a bigger problem than, classmates thinking I should have lower grades than them because I'm Black, if that makes sense. So it's like an observation I made, but I sort of ignored it because I just had other things to worry about that were more important.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, so you were 12 at that point in time, but I know did you come to the States to go to college? I mean, what did you study in college and why did you decide
No,
that major?
so I moved to the States in eighth grade, right?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we were in Belgium too long. My mom was like, "Yeah, I'm over this," and so
I
we're
got
coming
you.
to America. So a school year later, I was in the U.S. So no, I came to the U.S. in eighth grade. Did eighth grade
Mhm,
here, yeah, through now.
mhm. And then what about like what did you study in college? Where did you go?
Yeah, so I went to Princeton University. I majored in aerospace engineering because I still wanted to be an astronaut. And so I was like, aerospace, let me go build some rockets and then eventually I'll just get on one. And so that was the plan, go work for NASA or something, build some rockets there. And then that was a standard path for astronauts. And so that's the path I took.
Mhm, mhm. Now, how is that program? This is one of the first times in our on our show, someone went into that major. Like express to the our listeners, like what was that major like studying that?
Yeah, I think aerospace is very difficult. Any engineering is usually pretty difficult. And then even within that, there are levels. I think aerospace is one of the more difficult ones, especially when you get to classes like rockets or differential equations, or, anything around there. And so, but I sort of knew that when I applied, right? They
Mhm.
tell you the whole time, oh, aerospace engineering, that's rocket science. That's not easy, right? There's even an expression, it's not rocket science, and to imply that something's easy, which lets you know rocket science is hard. So I knew that, and then within that, Princeton is also hard on its
Yeah,
own,
true.
right? So
That's very
you had
prestigious.
a hard major for a hard school. Then, because at the time we had grade deflation at Princeton, because Princeton wanted to prove that we're not like Harvard. We don't just hand out A's in the Ivy League. And so they decided to hand out more C's than everyone else felt necessary. And so you're already at a school that's trying to prove a point that it's not easy there. Then you had a major that's harder than the average major there. So it was very challenging time. And also with that, with my personality, I'm a very social person. I like to meet people, go out, have fun. And so I did not want to give that up. And so you basically have to choose between straight A's or having friends in college.
Yeah, that is a hard choice right there. Because college is they always say is like the best times of your life.
And
Obviously.
I think that's a true statement. So
Mhm.
I agree with that.
You learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about people in general. Just being able to
Exactly.
network and connect. As a young adult, you're like, oh, you're in a high school, middle school. You don't really pay attention to like people's, energy. But like as you get older,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I no, and that's what I know. I need to hang around. I need to be around that more. I need to disassociate myself from individuals like this, and then you start to find out who you truly are. So college definitely does help, or some type of furthering your education. Now, I know that you went from the engineering at Princeton, but then you also got into Chicago, University of Chicago. You did business. You got an MBA. Why did you feel you
Yes.
need to get a business degree after doing, the engineering?
So after majoring in aerospace, I got a job in aerospace, right? I moved to LA, worked for Northrop Grumman, did that for 4 years. And it wasn't all it was cracked up to be, one. And two, I always had an inclination for something businessy, but that was challenging. And so part of the reason I stayed in aerospace was that I wanted to see it for myself, like, hey, is it what it's cracked up to? But also not disappointing your immigrant parents, and being like, hey, my son's a rocket scientist is something they were proud of from Princeton. I think, rocket science from Princeton sounds good on paper, but I was just bored to death. And so I started introspecting, saying to myself, hey, what do I want to do long term with my life? What makes me happy? It's like, well, I like business. I like working with people, all types of different people. But I also like working with engineers and working on technical things. I just don't want to be one. Don't like the
Hmm.
type of work I was doing. Is there a career path that can give me a marriage of those things that I want? And no job's perfect and so on. But on paper, product management popped up as a thing that met those requirements. And there, I also wanted to move back to the East Coast because that's where I'm from. I was like, let me at least go to New York eventually. And so in product management, you either went to startup in the Bay and hope they give you a chance, or you go to business school and, pick up some additional business skills and make the transition that way. And so because I wanted to move back east, it was easier to go to business school and say, okay, I'm halfway there, go to the Midwest, and then go east afterwards and switch to product management that way. So that's what I got my
Gotcha.
MBA for, actually.
Okay. Now, and I'm thinking about it, as a Haitian American, like you are definitely well established from the education into like where you are right now. You are a role model to a lot of the youth. Like, how does that make you feel? And like, what do you feel is like one of your most valuable qualities that you bring to your career?
Yeah. So first, being a role model or hearing that I'm a role model, I think that's a great feeling, right? You want people to look at you and feel like, one, that is something they want to also do, take a path that you took or achieve, the status, where you are at, but also that, yeah, this is someone that they look up to. This is someone they want to be with, and they want to be. And I think that is something that definitely makes me feel good. And I hope I can continue to make folks proud and show them the way by paving a path that they did not know about.
Mm-hmm. Now, after your education, now I'm thinking both after your engineering degree, your business degree, what was your first role? Like, what was your first job? And like,
Yeah.
where'd you work? What lessons did you learn from that first role and position?
Yeah. So the way the MBA works is that you do first year of classes, then you do a summer internship somewhere in the field you're interested in, hopefully, and then you get a full job. So I interned at Amazon first as a product manager, spent the summer in Seattle. I did not like Seattle or Amazon for that matter, I'll be honest. But at least I knew product management was the right thing for me. And so after that long term, I sort of said, okay, well, we know Amazon and Seattle's not the thing. What type of jobs do you want? So TripAdvisor at the time in Boston had a rotational program and post MBA program, which is for people that got their MBAs that wanted to be a product manager. You basically go to TripAdvisor in Boston and you do 4 rotations in 2 years, 6 months each, across 4 different products within the website, and decide at the end which one you like best, and that's where you'll be a product manager. And I thought that was great for me because I sort of wanted to know what kind of product manager I wanted to be. And if you get a job and you just go there, you don't get that freedom necessarily there. I was able to do 4 distinct rotations and sort of know what suits me, what style of product manager can I be, do I want to be? Because I got to work with different types of engineers, different type of bosses, and different types of products that had required different skills to succeed. I sort of saw what I was good at and what I liked, and if I could have both, if that makes sense. So that was a great program for me. I think I really grew from doing those 2 years at TripAdvisor and rotating through those four products.
And when you're in your career, like after graduating from college, getting your MBA engineering degree, like how could you express to us like the diversity that you saw in your career? Like, was it very diverse when you left the university and got into your career? Or do you see like it was
No, I think it may be getting less diverse over time. I'll be honest. It's an interesting thing. So I think in aerospace, in my classes, I think there are only 2 of us black kids my year. 3, actually. I lied. 3. I take that back. Out of 40. So that's not a lot, but that's not horrible. One more kid would have made it 10%, right? And so that's pretty high compared to tech representation. I'll get into that. And so at my first job, I was the only Black aerospace engineer as far as non-management folks that I knew. There's one person in management that I knew, and then another person that was there. So maybe 3. Yeah, it was not diverse at all. So like in all of aerospace at Northrop Grumman, and in the LA office, El Segundo, Manhattan Beach offices that I knew, as far as aerospace engineers, I'm pretty sure I was the only Black person below 30. So diversity, non-existent.
wow.
At Amazon, in my intern class, there are 250 of us product management interns in Seattle. I was the only one out of 250 that was Black.
Wow. 1 out of 250?
Yes. And so first, you can't search by race. So you don't know.
True.
But we had a WhatsApp group with everyone in it. And you would look at the profile pics, and some folks, of the darker hue, you'd be like, oh, they black, and then you check, no, they're not black, right? So I had a couple of those close calls. I try to check, like, nah, actually, you're not black. Oh, my bad. But I was the only black intern that summer, so the summer of 2016, out of 250 product management interns. Because we had an event also where we all came together and hung out. And of course, first thing I did was to find the other black product managers. And let me tell you, they were not there, right? Now, full time at Amazon, I think, quite a few black people went there. But as far as interns, I was the only one in that class in Seattle, for sure. And product management. There are other functions that had black people, just not product management. So that was not diverse either. TripAdvisor, there are only 4 of us rotating my year. So I don't expect more than 1 out of 4 people to be black. But in the product management org, there were 2 of us black product managers at the entire company. She was my mentor. She was also Haitian. And then she quit for another job. So I became the only black product manager at TripAdvisor up until I left.
I see.
Out of, I don't know how many that was. It was like maybe 50 of us or something. So you can see where I'm going with that. And then at MongoDB, when I joined MongoDB, I was the only black product manager. They had one before me. He had just quit a couple of months before. So, I came in at that time. Now it's 4 of us out of 40 something. So, we're close to 10%. So it's definitely much better representation now, especially at MongoDB compared to the other places I've worked, percentage wise and number wise even.
So it's going up and down.
Yeah. But I think usually I'm the only one, right? It's just usually how it is. I've gotten used to that. I got used to that a long time ago, honestly, since like high school. So I'm not surprised at this point.
No more. Yeah.
Yeah. And, sometimes you do when someone's gaslighting you, or, something happens, you're just looking for another black person to side eye with, and they're not there. Like, am I tripping? Like, did they just say something crazy? You don't have that anymore. So that reminds you. But that's in product management. But also there are other roles. For example, I have there are 5 of us now. I lied because I hired one. I forgot that part. So I did hire one. And that's the thing. When you're in a position of power, you're able to say, hey, is it that they don't exist, or are you guys just not taking the time to find them because you just grab the first person that seems convenient and that's it, right? And so I did hire a 5th. That's on my team. And we have black engineers. And so I'm cool with those folks too. So we do have representation as a whole. But even then in tech is like 3% black if I'm being nice, if I'm being generous. I'd say probably closer to 2%, right? For a country that's 12% black, I'd say underrepresented. But yeah, I think it's just been that way for me since my high school classes. Because my high school was half black, but in my AP classes, I think there's either just me or 2 or 3 of us, depending on the class, if that makes sense.
Nice.
So it's been that way, the way the funnel works, the system works in the US. Just as an observation, it's been made to be that way inevitably, just at every level. Right. And it doesn't change. And as you get promoted, as you go up the food chain, the ladder, however you look at it, it gets even more sparse. Right. I'm the only black product manager that manages people at MongoDB, for example. Right. And I don't expect that to change soon.
Something that I'm noticing, and obviously when you're breaking it down, you're very observant. You're very observant.
Yeah.
I think that's something that the listeners really should just gravitate to. Like, if you want to incline up that ladder, you have to be observant. You have to know who's in front of you, who's behind you, who could you bring up the ladder with you. When you're in a position of power, how do you use it for the right reasons? You're very observant, and you've been able to place yourself in the right places and maneuver through a lot of things based off of like you just being aware of your surroundings. Some people might feel like, oh, you know what, I just go to my job and just work, but then they stay at a certain level, they hit that ceiling, and then they're like,
Yeah.
oh, well, how I can't go any further. But that's because you're not being observant. You're not seeing those opportunities, or more importantly, you're not seeing those individuals that you should be connecting with. Now, I know a lot of the listeners, that are from a lot of our listeners are immigrant background, and they might feel that like it's very hard to achieve what you're doing right now. Like, what would be an advice for them that obviously working in aerospace, the industry?
Yeah. So, well, first, I'm now in a database company, right? So I'm in technology now. I'm not aerospace. But I think it depends, right? I think in life, success is an element of luck, right place, right time, and also hard work. I think you need both. But also smart work, right? If you're working yourself to death, but not in a position to create progress, it's not going to work. For example, I hit a dead end at TripAdvisor. It was like, well, this is not the right place for me to be long term, so I need to move, and I switched jobs, and I've been doing really well since I have because I've now joined an environment where basically the tides are going up. So my boat is going up just by default of the tides going up, and now I can focus on making my boat the best boat out there. But at least it's not on dry land, anyways, if that makes sense.
True.
So
Yep.
with that, I think that yeah, you have to look at you don't know what you don't know, and I think that's one thing that blinds us immigrants. For example, a lot of my friends that are immigrants, they're all doctors, and some of them love it, some of them hate it. But like they observed that was a guaranteed way for immigrants to become rich and successful with a lot less discrimination than some other jobs, and so that's what they did. You work hard, you deal with residency, and you get at the end of it. But I think you have to look at what paths are out there. And the only way you can do that is by observing and asking questions or talking to folks and doing research, right? All of the above combined. For example, right, when I said, hey, I was leaving aerospace, what is a thing that's going to let me work with technology, work with engineers, but not be an engineer, but also do business like things while working with engineers? That's not a job that I knew existed. But you know what? When you Google that, product management actually pops up as a thing, or at least it did on Google search results back in 2012 when I started thinking about that. And so, from there, it's like, oh, what is product management? Okay, what does it do? How do you get there? Right? All these things. How much does it pay? Oh, wow, it pays more than I'm making now. You know what? That's a good enough next step because it means I won't have to regress financially to do something that makes me happy. And so that's already a good start. So I think a lot of people are just not as curious as they should be. They sort of say, hey, this is what the universe has for me, the end. So I'm just going to work hard on that path that I've been set on. And it's like, no, you can get out of this road and just go find another road. Not only that, you can Google what the other roads are before you go, and you don't go there blindly, and see if even the end path that they go to, if it's something that you would be happy with.
That's the beautiful thing about the internet nowadays. You can Google everything.
Yeah, exactly.
You get your degree online from Google if that was the case. You went to Princeton, you could have went to Google University and just and got it all, right? But it wouldn't have been the same. Wouldn't have been the same. Now, a lot of the engineers I've come in contact with, a lot of them seem to be very analytical, right? Because obviously your job is very analytical. How do you? And more importantly, I feel like going back to them being analytical, they're not very emotional. Right, they don't let their emotions cloud their judgment. How do you kind of manage all of this?
So I think they're correlated, but not always, right? So first, I've been very mathematically inclined. I've been very analytical as far as since I've known. And I'm not sure if it's something you're born with or you develop. I believe it's the latter. You can probably develop it a lot, but that's just been my style, right? The kind of person I am. So I've always been analytical in that sense, and not making emotionally charged decisions. But on top of that, because I'm Black, I'm not allowed to have emotions at work anyways, because you look like the angry Black man or whatever. So I also have to keep that in mind, even if I would be pretty pissed off. Now I'm in a place at my job, my company, where I could be a bit more emotional, but normally I'm not. I just call things like they are, right? For example, and maybe it's because, my dad was a politician, you sort of need to listen to what people say and see what they do and make sure they match. Right. So if my boss is like, hey, Garaudy, you've been killing it, you've been doing well, you definitely have a promotion coming soon. And in the time for the promotion, I don't get promoted. Then now I know their word is not bond. I can't rely on that. I need to trust actions. Right. Or another one saying, hey, we have a bright future for you, but you're not giving me a raise. Well, you clearly don't have high expectations of me if the money doesn't follow. I do not care how well you think about me. If you're not giving me new positions, new work to increase my strengths, are paying me more, right? And so I look at these things and I'm like, well, I have to behave differently in the system. So I observe and realize that I get punished for being emotional. So even if I wanted to be, I can't be at work because that does not help me progress in my career, if that makes sense.
No, I get you on that. it's a very hard thing at times to kind of juggle both, anything that's
Yep.
like in a very analytical standing, point where you're like, all right, it's think even like a doctor, right? In a sense, you're in the
Hmm.
hospital, you're performing surgery on somebody. If the emotions are there, that could definitely cloud your judgment in that operation room. So it's very hard to kind of like wear both hats, but you seem like you've definitely found a great way of navigating through that, through the many years.
Yeah, and I think you do need both hats, by the way. I want to make that clear. I don't want folks to think only being analytical helps. I think analytical helps in terms of making decisions, judgment, but you need emotions, you need empathy to empathize with people, relate to them, because someone has to also like you to pay you more money or promote you or give you positions. All right. You don't want someone to begrudgingly promote you. That usually doesn't take you far. Just like a doctor has to be empathetic when they're giving bad news or
Mhm.
be happy when they're giving great news, right? So you need both. It's just a matter of, yeah, being emotionally charged at the wrong times for the wrong reasons, especially negative emotions, that won't get you far. But you do need both to succeed in life, in my opinion.
Mhm, mm. Okay. Now I know from just your bio and obviously from our conversation today, you've worked with some very large companies, corporations, if that's the case, right? You mentioned
Mhm.
Amazon, there's TripAdvisor, there's a lot of great companies, and you've traveled around. What was like one of the biggest obstacles that you ran into by working for these large corporations?
Yeah, obstacles that I ran into yeah, I think as far as obstacles, it's sort of related to the randomness of life. Sometimes your success is not in your own hands. No matter what you do, it is up to your manager to predict your success. And so that's why I say, in a situation with a horrible boss, you should really think about, can you outlast them? Is this going to cost you years of your career? For example, at Northrop Grumman, when I got there, I had this great boss named Dave Allen, who wrote me my recs for business school, for example. He was a high level VP. When I came, he said, you know what? I don't know what he saw in me and said, I like this kid. But he sort of took me under his wing and became my mentor and put me on projects that had high visibility. And so, if I had a boss that hated me, then it doesn't matter how hard I work, how well I do. It's the same as the professor that is racist and you're writing an essay. Doesn't matter how great that essay is, they cannot give you an A plus. So that is a thing I had to learn and make peace with, that, hey, your environment determines your success. It's the same as, you grow up in an area where the future is bleak for the entire neighborhood. Your odds of success are much lower than if you grew up in a wealthy one, no matter what your home situation is like, or anything like that. So, the environment that you're in matters so much. And so an obstacle about that is navigating people that are more powerful than you, trying to not help you succeed. They may not be keeping you down explicitly, but they definitely have no encouragement,
Intentions. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
No
Yeah.
intentions to help you succeed. And so you need to watch out and be able to know ASAP when you're in that environment. And I ran into a lot of folks there. It's just that the folks that wanted me to succeed were above them, so they could not hold me down. Right? When your
Okay,
boss's
let's
boss likes
go.
you,
Come on
it
now.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your boss dislikes you. If your boss's boss likes you, right? That helps a lot. And so things like that are things to keep in mind. And you need to be cognizant of the environment and say, hey, am I in an environment where I can thrive, or am I in an environment where if I work hard, I will be rewarded, appropriately? And so I think that's a thing I've had to navigate, because certain places I've definitely been in those. For example, I had some rotations at TripAdvisor where it was not the right environment. Thank God it was over at the end of the 6 months, right? But if I had been stuck there, definitely would have been a different Garaudy talking right now.
Mm. Now, in this whole time, like, how did you work on your voice? Like working in these corporations, and you did mention that, you know, 2%, 3. You were giving some. It wasn't even close to 10% at a lot of places that
Yeah.
you worked at. How did you like gain the strength to have that voice in your office to become a leader, right? And to get
Yeah.
that type of credit.
Yeah. So credit comes with two things: wins and confidence. So I think I'm a fairly confident person, as in I'm confident in my skills and my abilities, right? But you need to be given a chance to prove that. And at least in the roles I'm in product and engineering, there's enough things to do to demonstrate that you can deliver at your level, at least. Now, it doesn't mean people are enthusiastic to, give you more responsibilities than you deserve, it doesn't mean that someone's gonna let you be VP when you're not ready to be that, but at least they'll be like, hey, you know what? Garudi's killing in his position. And so I think the first thing is I always show up, observe. I see what other folks sound like when they're talking. For example, men are rewarded more when you're more combative and assertive about your decision compared to women, right? So it's just a messed up thing in society we need to fix, but it is how it is. And so I need to see who is getting rewarded with what behavior. For example, there are certain environments where being a bit more loud, and confident is better. Another one, it's like being more timid and careful, like, well, always hedging your bets with where you qualifying your statements is another thing that works well. And so to me, it's about observing what is the culture of the company? What does success look like for the folks that are above me that I want to be? What is their behavior? Which ones do I hear other people around me saying, wow, I really admire this person? Which one are like, well, this person's horrible, I don't want to be them. And so from there, that's part of it. And then there's always a level of authenticity. The beauty of it is that the more I succeed, the more I prove that I can work and deliver well, the more I can be myself. And so over time, anywhere I am, over time, I become more and more myself. For example, I have a work version and a home version, but those become more blended, right? I become more the real Garaudy as I go. And also it depends who you're talking to. When I'm talking to my immediate engineering team, we're all buddy, right? I can speak more slang or more, casual English with them. Whereas if I'm talking to CEO or some VPs, I'll definitely be more formal, right? So it depends on the environment also. But I think eventually you have to be yourself. It's just of how much of yourself is required for work. And once you see the formula for success, if you sound like everybody else, no one's going to fault you for being confident if everybody else is confident.
I like the fact that you're hitting on something that a lot of the guests have said. You got to be yourself. That's like one of the common lines that has come up. When people say, "Oh, how have you been successful over the many years?" and they say, "I'm just keeping it real. I'm trying to be myself.
Honestly,
I'm not trying to change." And the industry will change a lot of people, whether you're working in corporate America or you're working in the arts industry, whatever the case may be. Sports industry, like the industry itself as a whole could change you. And if you're not strong enough, if you don't know who you are as an individual, you then start to say, well, you know what? I'm not getting any opportunities the way I should be getting opportunities. Then you start to lash out at the company. You start to change your attitude and your demeanor when you're there, and it becomes a different type of person. You're not as humble, versus the person who's always being blessed with a lot of, great opportunities. You start to give back. So there's a lot of things that go on. And and as a leader, it's always hard to choose good and bad, but because you're put in those situations every single day. You're like, all right, do I take care of this? Do I do this? Everyone's going to have something negative to say about you. Oh, you know what? He didn't make the right decision. I would have went this way. But you're in that position because you've studied, you've worked hard, and like you said, you earned that respect. Maybe not from
it's also
everybody at that
exhausting.
point. Yeah, it definitely is. I can only imagine, especially at a higher position like that, where you have a lot of people to manage and talk to, and different mood swings and attitudes. Like, oh yeah, that'll get you every single. And you gotta do it every single day, right? Now, working at MongoDB, like I know you talked about it a little bit. I know I seen it in the bio. Could you explain to the listeners, like, what do you actually do there at MongoDB?
Yeah. So first, I'll say what MongoDB does and then what I do. MongoDB, we're a database company or a data platform company, a developer data platform. So basically, developers work with MongoDB to store their data, right? So take like any website, any app, they need to store information, right? So I always use Instagram a lot, right? When you message somebody, Instagram needs to store that information that you message them so that every time you open your messages, it shows that you messaged them already. Or they need to store who you follow so that, you only see follower stuff on your feed and nothing else, et cetera, right? So all of that information needs to be stored somewhere. And MongoDB is just one of the next generation databases that does that. And so within that, I'm a product manager in the core database itself, and a product called Charting mostly. And what I do is to make sure that MongoDB can handle any company scale. So imagine Facebook was like, hey, we're putting everything on MongoDB. Everybody and their mama's going to be there. We want to make sure that we can handle that kind of data that they need, that they can, use that information, surface it fast, right? So if you refresh your feed, that it loads fast, the app loads fast. In order to do that, you need to render all that information pretty quickly, right? And so we are making sure that any company that wants to store the information with us, they can do it really fast. And my job as a product manager is to figure out what problems our customers are running into. And out of those, since we can't solve all of them, figure out which ones are worth solving and in what order. Right? The sooner you solve the most critical problems, the more money you get because customers are happy and they're willing to pay for value. Right? But not everything's valuable that you do. So you have to figure out what to build, what not to build, what to fix, what not to fix. My job is figuring all that out by talking to a bunch of customers, a bunch of other different teams, and also figure out how to position and message it. All of that is within my responsibility.
And what's like the most exciting part of your day?
Yeah, so it depends. But I think talking to customers is usually the most exciting part because, especially when they have a problem and you go, hey, we've solved it. And they're like, what? And like, yeah, get the latest version. They're like, wow, this is crazy. And they come back like, wow, all the problems went away. I think making customers happy, having them be surprised that the problem that has been nagging them for months, years has been fixed is something that feels really good.
I like the fact that you kind of broke down the whole storage thing. I never thought about it. Instagram, Facebook. I'm just like, okay, it's just on the back page, But I'm thinking about everyone who has those types of platforms. Like that's a massive amount of storage.
Yep.
Right. So to have the opportunity or the ability to save a message, and that goes for that. I'm assuming that's cell phones as well too.
Yeah, it depends on any
Emails.
app where you want to store your information, correct? Emails, all of that. Every information stored on the internet needs to be stored in a database, right? Just like you have storage on your laptop, you store it on a data racks, data servers, or the cloud nowadays. Everything's on AWS, Azure, or Google. But yes, you have to store all that information somewhere. The context is saved, it's loaded. That's why when you open your WhatsApp, for example, you see the thread of messages you had with your friends from yesterday, that doesn't disappear. All of that has to be stored somewhere. No matter what website or app you're using, that information is saved in a database.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of my last questions to you is, and I want to dive into this one right here. It says, as a Black man, you're a leader, a role model in the tech space, right? IT, you're doing a lot of those things. What do you think is like one of the most important qualities to have to bring to a team?
Yeah. So I think as a leader, the ability to motivate your team is number one. And there are many ways to do that. Sometimes some of it are stylistic, some of it you need a combination of both. And the way I do that from my end, for example, is to explain what the goal is. For example, in corporate America and most jobs, a lot of people don't know why they're doing their job. What I mean by that is they don't know how the job contributes to the business or to society, right? Depends on what motivates you. But also, you need to tell them individually, what they're doing, how does it help, and what does winning look like, right? So for us, for example, having the biggest tech companies in the world store everything on MongoDB is a win for us, right? That type of scale, say, hey, I need 100 terabytes or a petabyte of data to store is a thing there. And so motivating them, saying, hey, what you're doing, this is how it contributes to the business. This is how it makes the business win. This is how it makes us win. This is how it makes you win. I think being able to motivate people by giving them something to strive for and rewarding them accordingly when they deliver, whether it's making them feel good, acknowledge them in public, or compensation, or all of the above in my case, I think that is a thing that is very important for a leader to do. If you cannot tell people why they need to do something, why what they're doing is important, then they're not going to be motivated to do it. But they need to know that there's an end goal that they have to reach.
Without an end goal, sometimes as a leader, you do have to set a goal, but then also motivate the people throughout that goal to keep the goal. And I know that's definitely a very hard task. Some goals they take months, weeks to complete.
Years.
If that's the case, right? Years, right?
Yep.
So to keep someone motivated throughout that just goes to show like the leadership someone needs to have in that type of position.
Yes.
Like people could easily sidetrack and be like, this is time consuming. We're not getting anywhere with this. You still got no. Don't, we got it. We're almost there.
And that's where milestones come in, right? So, for example, look at track. You're running the 4x4, 4x1, right? You have splits for that reason.
Love a track.
Right? And so you look at something like that. You have a 4x4 relay. You look at the first 400. That tells you where the team's headed. Are we going to break the world record? Right? Or 4x1, same thing. U.S. versus Jamaica. You look at the first leg. If someone's running sub 10, that's great. You're on the way to break the world record. So you need to set those goals. So if you're running a marathon, it may be that, hey, can you make the first X miles in under an hour, right? And that tells you something. Okay, where am I at the hour mark? Am I on a good pace? That may be easier to do, breaking up by weeks, by months, by years, depending on, how long the team needs to set, so that by the end you look back like, wow, we hit all these milestones along the way. I think it's easier to motivate people for shorter term stuff than long term. Right? Same thing. Let's say you want to lose, I don't know, X pounds within a year. You probably want to do it month by month. It's easier to motivate someone in the short term. So you'd have to basically break it down and add smaller goals, sub goals along the way, so that you can reach the bigger goal over time.
Well, thank you for breaking that down, Rudy. I greatly appreciate you sharing your information and knowledge and just giving us a lot of gems on our interview today. I think that your journey is definitely something. Um, one of the first individuals that had that degree and the major and the things that you're doing within your own community. And now, like you said, like being at a place and position where you're able to hire people of color. Like you said, there was 2%, 3%. Now you have an opportunity to kind of help change that. And I feel like one of the biggest things, and we as a people, is the ability of change, like being able to make a decision, do something now to kind of currently change the trajectory of where it could potentially go. So you're in that position. I just want to say any last words you want to give to our listeners.
Yeah, actually, you just made me realize something. I think that there are a lot of us as we succeed, even though we complain about being the only Black person, we sort of gatekeep. We like the feeling of being the only Black person low key. And so we don't bring other folks along with us because that no longer makes us unique. And I think that long term, that does not help us individually or us as a people. And so always look to see subconsciously if you're gatekeeping in any way, shape, or form. I think that is a thing. You should go out of your way to help folks who look like you, that are just as talented, that haven't had the same luck or the same chance to succeed, right? And so I always go out of my way to find folks that are underrepresented and bring them along to give them a chance. Because if I don't do it, then why should someone that doesn't look like me do it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, Garaudy, I want to say thank you, thank you again for just taking this opportunity to be with us and share the information you gave with us today. I want to let the listeners know if you want to hear more inspirational stories like Rudy, please check us out at ZakaConnect.com. Follow our social at Zaka Connect and follow our feed Zaka wherever you listen to your podcast.